speakers. Our first one is, I believe it's Ray, and your last name starts with an N. I cannot pronounce it. And Madam Chair, can the speaker, when he comes up, spell his last name for me?
Good afternoon. Would you spell your last name for the record, please?
Sure. My last name is spelled Nowosielski.
And it is Ray,
Excuse-
correct?
It is
Thank
Raymond.
you.
Okay.
Raymond Nowosielski.
Nova, sure, okay. Never mind. Go ahead.
Council people, thank you for hearing me today. Mr. Bell. I'm a journalist. I am a proud Midwesterner, but I live out of town for the last 3 years. I've become kind of a regular in St. Louis County, focused on doing an investigative podcast around the death of one citizen of St. Louis County, which happened in late 2018, a 24-year-old named Danyé Jones, would have been 28 on Friday. In that capacity, I've gotten to know very well his loved ones, in particular his mother, Melissa, and his stepfather, Derek, who are behind me here. And I'm coming to you today because I realize that budget meetings are often the best means for a county council to have oversight and foster accountability within various offices. I came to know some of you in the summer of 2020, about a year and a half into our investigation, when we sought to bring some of what we had pulled together around the case of Danyé and the investigation or lack thereof that was done into his death. Some of you may know the case, but essentially his family felt there was a rush to judgment by county PD in declaring it a suicide, and in particular felt there should have been extra scrutiny to the case because it bore many of the hallmarks of a historic lynching. And so as we put together our case, we sought a meeting with Wesley Bell. And again, that's when we came to know some of you on the county council in seeking help to try to get to Mr. Bell. I want to be clear that I have a lot of admiration for the activism and advocacy that Mr. Bell did circa the Mike Brown Jr. time period. And I'm very politically aligned with many of the things that Mr. Bell has campaigned on and appreciated. And I know that Melissa did as well, that we were invited into his office to speak for an hour in August of 2020. But frankly, we were so mystified by the outcome of that meeting that it became the basis for the 11th, last episode of our podcast, After the Uprising. And the final moments involved a call from the investigator that we were told would be working on. We felt there were assurances close to promises on concrete next steps that were going to be taken after we came out of that August meeting. And in December, I was with Melissa and with Derek when they got a phone call from lead investigator Ron Goldstein, in which we were informed that not only had none of the things that we were told in that meeting would be done had been done, but that there was no intention to do so, and that if Melissa wanted to go any further with this, she should contact, generally speaking, the local FBI office. Part of the reason I'm here today is because several sources actually, have made me aware, and I don't know the answers behind these, but of someone who's being called a serial killer using a .40 caliber named Perez Reed, who was recently arrested. Apparently, I guess I don't know the case that well, but apparently there are 6 deaths tied to Perez. And I'm told this was an instance in which previously a prosecution had been underway by Mr. Bell, and it was dismissed for failure to prosecute. Coincidentally, in October, someone named Jalen Jefferson apparently killed a young woman named Isis Marr in I believe it's the Baden neighborhood of the city of St. Louis. This was another instance in which only a month before, in September 2021, I'm told there was a failure to prosecute. I can't pretend to know the circumstances behind these, but it lines up a little bit with our own experience of what we delivered to Mr. Bell via a binder and via an hour of conversation in August of 2020 regarding potential persons of interest around the death of Danyé Dion Jones. And if I guess I could pause there, but if I may, I'd like to just tell you the outline of what was provided during that meeting. There were essentially two categories of information we were imparting during that meeting and provided through that binder as well. One was raising an alarm regarding the lack of investigation, evidence for a lack of investigation or real true investigation past the day that Danyé was found on October 17th, 2018. And we were raising the alarm in particular about the lead detective, a detective named Timothy Anderer, who we believe we'd found evidence of racially motivated bias that may have led him to not investigate that to the fullest extent. I'd be happy to detail that if you would like. One of the headlines, though, was an N-word spelled out in code via a meme that had been posted on the detective's social media account. Now, a second category were leads, concrete leads that we felt could be run down to either eliminate the homicide theory and the potential that there was a murderer still out there who had killed Danyé, and whether or not the suicide finding was accurate. Among those, we had gotten into Danyé's Android phone, but we knew that he had an iPhone, and only subpoena power could get Apple to open that. We were also aware of a missing iPad and felt that if that could be located also through subpoena power through Apple, that perhaps, and I'll give you more details on that, that it might be in the possession of someone who would know more about what happened on Danyé's last night. And then, most importantly, there was DNA found on a bed sheet. Two or more individuals, male DNA that wasn't Danyé, the lead detective learned about and chose not to swab it any further to try to eliminate the two males in the household, the stepfather, Derek, who's here, and the uncle, Daniel. So we asked very concretely and were assured that the office would get in touch with those two individuals so they could swab them and find if they were among the two or more males whose DNA was on the bed sheet used in the hanging or not. And if not, then the question would become, whose DNA was that? Lastly, amongst the persons of interest we suggested strongly that Bell's office get in touch with was someone who only, I believe it was 6 weeks prior to Danyé's death, had allegedly shot his best friend 4 times and narrowly missed his younger brother. And through the cell phone, getting into Danyé's cell phone, we were able to determine that he had had communications about trying to find this person, whose name is Marcel Foster, allegedly. And so there seemed to be reason in which this person might have had interest to go after Danyé only a few weeks later. Marcel Foster, by the way, was picked up in late December of last year after having shot a 32-year-old named Larico Martin outside a club, also over a jealous girlfriend situation, which is what we had been informed was his reason for shooting at Danyé's friend and younger brother. There's a question about whether or not, had Marcel been questioned in the time from August 2020 when we met with Mr. Bell, December of 2020 when he shot Larico Martin, whether that may have gone somewhere. I don't know what happened with that case in January when Larico passed away. I believe he was charged with murder, but I haven't been able to find anything about where that case stands. It was a city case. That's what I have to tell you today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Melissa Sanders.
Hello, my name is Melissa McKinnies Sanders. I am the mother of Danyé Jones, who was found hanging from a tree in October of 2018. The reason I come to you today is I didn't know which meeting to come to, but I can be at every meeting I need to be at. But I have an issue. Maybe we can put this in a budget, if possible. If not, then, just let me know. I can raise it and maybe pay for it myself. But all I ever ask for is someone to give us the time for a proper investigation. Not putting on a detective, a lead detective that is known for being a racist, that's known for not liking activists and protesters as myself. Before my son was found killed, we were threatened. He was threatened, I was threatened. Yet, in the report, there was so many lies. Also, the detective, which is Timothy Anderer, he said that he sent me a letter stating that I can come and pick up the evidence so that I can do my own, have a private investigation. I never received the letter. I still haven't heard anything about the letter. So as Danyé's mom, all I ask is maybe if in the budget, we can get some answers. I'll be at every meeting I need to be at. But as Danyé's mom, I ask for someone to care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Derek, and I can't read the last name.
Could you,
Derek Cornez,
could you spell that last name, please?
Arnez, as in zebra.
Thank you.
Yes.
Arnez,
Okay, all right.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Arnez.
Okay, yes, I'm Danyé's stepfather. I don't like to use the word step because they're used to elevate onto something. But anyways, I was told that I will be contacted for my DNA to eliminate me as being one of the people on the sheet. There was no documented information. There was no phone calls, no nothing that came to me in regards to this. I was also told that that they canvassed the neighborhood to talk to people about what happened on the event of Danyé's death, the day of his death. There was nothing documented, but we were told that they canvassed. There was nothing documented saying who they talked to or address or whatever they use in investigating or interviewing neighbors. So we were told they did this. So our investigators went out and they canvassed, and not one person, not one, remember talking to a police officer, an investigator, or anything to that level to get the information needed to find out what possibly could have happened that day. But we were told that it was, which is a lie. Okay, that's two lies. So it leads me to believe that from the lack of work ethic and the seriousness of this case, that they put it to the side and said, we'll deal with this as we go along, but we're not going to put too much time into it. And this is a young man that was found hanging in the backyard from a tree with his pants rolled down, not slid down, rolled down outwardly around his ankles, indentations, knots on his eye. Okay, showing that there was some type of abuse or maybe some type of struggle in that, but they deem it to be a suicide, and I don't see how someone committed suicide could tie an intricate knot and roll their pants down and strategically hang themselves in his own mother's backyard for her to see. So I feel like the office of Wesley Bell, they didn't put in the time or the effort to do a thorough investigation. Now I heard him talking about the budgets. I heard him talking about they short-staffed on this, that, and the other. I heard what they did in 2018 as far as 58% like murder prosecutions or whatnot. But in 2018, my son was found hanging in the backyard. But I don't see anything showing that they put any type of work in to do a thorough investigation to get down to the bottom of it. Now, I'm a stepfather. I'm sure some of you have children and grandchildren. If this was to happen, that you look a little deeper into it, and that you want something done about suspicious things that just don't add up in this case. But yeah, we were told within 24 hours that he committed suicide. How could you come to that conclusion with all the evidence in front of you? With a binder showing documentation of this detective Andrew who showed up at my house that morning laughing with a black eye that was red on the inside. So he'd been freshly punched in his eye or something. But he's laughing. But it's such in the time and the matter of what happened. And then he's also a detective involved in matters that happened out in Berkeley when he was talking about niggas in that language. And this is someone you pay as taxpayers to represent you to be the face of this county out in the public, using language to that extent and with that type of emotion. And then he shows up at my house and laughing and joking, but deemed something as suicide. What I want is accountability. What I want is real work put into this investigation. He's just not another black man on the street that nobody care about. He was snatched from my household. My wife been dealing with this mentally. She's destroyed, but to be put aside and not given the proper attention and investigation to get down to the bottom of this, I feel like it's a shame on that department. It should be thoroughly looked into. And I beg the council to if you can, with your influence, please have something done or have something looked at a little deeper into this matter to see maybe there's something overlooked, or maybe no effort put in whatsoever into this investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnaz.
Next speaker is Tom Sullivan.